Melania, a groundbreaking documentary about First Lady Melania Trump's life and a special focus on the 20 days leading up to President Trump's second inauguration, January 20th. The Amazon MGM Studios documentary hits theaters worldwide this Friday, January 30th. And the First Lady hosted a private screening at the White House for 70 special guests. The first time friends and family saw the film Saturday night. The President and First Lady will attend a premiere at the Trump Kennedy Center Thursday night for another screening. Melania's senior advisor, Mark Beckman, who produced the film, says this is not a political film at all, as the First Lady led creative direction for the film.
Donald Trump just watched what sources suggest could become the most expensive and embarrassing failure of his entire presidency, and the early numbers coming out are reportedly catastrophic. We're not talking about disappointing box office performance or mixed reviews. We're talking about what insiders are allegedly calling a $40 million vanity project that theaters across America might be rejecting so completely that the studio could be considering hiding the actual numbers. Ticket sales in New York allegedly show only handfuls of seats booked. Reports from Palm Beach suggest even Trump country theaters are practically empty, and Amazon executives are reportedly being dispatched to premiere events in a desperate attempt to create the appearance of support for a film that audiences apparently have zero interest in seeing. This isn't just a bad movie. This could be public humiliation for Trump on a scale that proves his name and brand have become so toxic that even his own supporters won't spend money to watch a documentary about his wife. But before we break down how catastrophically this documentary disaster could damage Trump's brand and political standing, real quick, you cannot trust mainstream media to explain what a $40 million coerced investment failing this badly reveals about corruption and consequences. That's why we built Patrick Smith's show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want analysis that actually connects Melania's movie flop to Trump's broader pattern of everything he touches turning worthless, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens with this premiere over the next few days could become a symbol of Trump's declining influence and toxic brand. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what the early signals might actually reveal about this project, because this represents something that could be far more significant than just one unsuccessful film. When Amazon reportedly paid $40 million for distribution rights and then allegedly spent another $35 million on marketing for a total $75 million investment, that's a massive commitment that suggests the deal might have been about something other than normal business calculations. And when that enormous investment is tracking toward potentially making only $5 million opening weekend, when social media is allegedly flooded with videos of audiences booing the trailer in theaters, when the studio might be so embarrassed they're considering not releasing official box office numbers, you're looking at what could be one of the most spectacular commercial failures in recent film history. And that failure might expose the entire corrupt arrangement where Jeff Bezos potentially felt coerced into buying a worthless product to appease a president who controls billions in government contracts and has power to make Amazon's antitrust problems much worse. Let's start with how this deal allegedly came together, because understanding the timeline and relationships could reveal whether this was legitimate business transaction or something closer to extortion dressed up as filmmaking. Sources suggest Jeff Bezos had dinner with Trump at Mar-a-Lago before Amazon announced the $40 million acquisition. That's not normal. Film distribution deals don't typically get made at presidential estates over dinner with the president himself. And the context reportedly matters enormously. Amazon holds billions in government cloud computing contracts. The company faces ongoing federal antitrust cases that could fundamentally reshape their business. Bezos owns The Washington Post, which Trump has attacked relentlessly. In that position, with that much at stake, Bezos might have felt enormous pressure to demonstrate loyalty or face consequences that could cost far more than $40 million. Reports indicate Amazon also donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund around the same time. So you've got the dinner at Mar-a-Lago, then the $1 million inaugural donation, then the announcement of the $40 million documentary deal. That sequence could suggest a pattern where Bezos was allegedly finding multiple ways to channel money to Trump or Trump family interests in exchange for continued favorable treatment. Think about what leverage Trump might have had. A phone call to regulators could make Amazon's antitrust problems worse. Pulling federal contracts could cost the company billions. Continuing to attack the Washington Post could damage its credibility and subscriber numbers. Trump had numerous ways to potentially hurt Bezos's business interests, and $40 million for a documentary nobody wanted might have seemed like cheap insurance against presidential retaliation. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show because sources suggest the deal was widely seen within the industry as appeasement rather than legitimate acquisition. That industry insiders reportedly recognized immediately this wasn't based on commercial potential, that the licensing fee was enormously inflated for what the product actually was, that this was Amazon buying access and protection rather than buying a film they believed would succeed. And there's allegedly another element that makes the coercion theory more credible. Reports indicate Amazon refused to share the film with critics ahead of release. That's highly unusual. Studios typically want critical reviews generating buzz before theatrical premieres. The only reason to hide a film from critics is if you know reviews will be terrible and want to minimize negative coverage before opening weekend. That suggests Amazon might have known they'd acquired something with no commercial value, but had to go through the motions of releasing it anyway to fulfill whatever arrangement had been made. So what are the actual signals emerging about how badly this film might be performing? Because the specific numbers and patterns reportedly tell a story of almost complete audience rejection. This isn't underperforming expectations. This could be catastrophic failure that exposes just how little interest exists in anything Trump branded. Reports indicate ticket sales are dismal across multiple markets. Sources suggest New York has only handfuls of seats booked. Palm Beach, supposedly Trump's stronghold where his most loyal supporters live, allegedly shows theaters practically empty. If you can't fill theaters in locations where Trump has maximum support, what hope is there for national success? And the projections might be even more devastating. Sources indicate industry analysts are estimating the film could make approximately $5 million opening weekend, against a $75 million total investment including marketing. That's less than 7% return. In what universe is that acceptable business performance? That's the kind of loss that would end careers at normal studios. But this reportedly isn't normal business. This might be consequence of a coerced deal where commercial viability was never the real point. Share this video with everyone you know because there are allegedly even more troubling signs. Reports suggest social media has been flooded with videos of audiences booing when the Melania trailer plays in theaters. Think about what that means. People aren't just uninterested, they're actively hostile. They're expressing contempt in public spaces. That's not the reaction you want for something you've invested $75 million in. And sources indicate Amazon is taking desperate measures to try salvaging the premiere, holding events in nearly 24 cities nationwide the day before general release, dispatching executives to attend these premieres, creating the appearance of support through coordinated company presence since organic audience interest apparently doesn't exist. When a studio has to send its own executives to fill seats at premieres, that tells you everything about how the project is actually performing. But beyond the corrupt deal structure and disastrous sales, there's reportedly a fundamental content problem. Sources suggest the documentary itself might be so limited in scope and boring in execution that even sympathetic audiences couldn't possibly find it engaging. And when you combine terrible content with a toxic brand, you get exactly the kind of failure that's allegedly unfolding. Reports indicate the film focuses on 20 days leading up to Trump's second inauguration. 20 days. That's the entire scope of a 140-minute documentary. Think about how little can happen in 20 days that would justify over 2 hours of film. What story arc exists? What dramatic tension develops? What insight into Melania as a person could possibly emerge from footage of event planning and preparation? And sources suggest the content that does exist might be superficial party planning and fashion coordination. One description characterized it as a documentary about what a first lady has to do to get her family ready personally and professionally. That's not compelling cinema. That's potentially boring behind-the-scenes footage that would struggle to hold attention even at 30 minutes, let alone 140. Think about who the possible audience could be. Trump supporters who want to see flattering coverage of the first family, but even they apparently aren't buying tickets based on the dismal sales. People genuinely interested in Melania as a historical figure, but the 20-day scope might be too limited to provide real insight. Film enthusiasts looking for quality documentary filmmaking, but sources suggest the production was rushed together after the election rather than carefully crafted. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show because there's also the timing problem. The film is reportedly releasing while Americans deal with multiple crises: economic uncertainty, controversial federal operations, political chaos. The disconnect between watching elaborate party planning footage while the country struggles could make the entire project feel tone-deaf. It's what some analysts allegedly called a fiddling while Rome burns quality that makes audiences uncomfortable rather than entertained. And there are questions about the filmmaker attached. Reports indicate the director has faced multiple allegations of misconduct that he's denied. But regardless of the truth of those allegations, having that controversy attached to a project attempting to present the First Lady in a positive light creates additional problems. It's another reason critics and audiences might be skeptical about the entire endeavor. But there's reportedly an even darker element to this story that could make the film's failure more significant than just commercial disappointment. Sources indicate the filmmaker was allegedly spotted in a photo released as part of the Epstein files. And when you connect that to Trump's own documented associations with Epstein, the decision to hire this particular director for a First Lady documentary might raise questions about judgment or something worse. Think about what it means that Trump and Melania selected someone with these alleged connections to make what's supposed to be a prestige project showcasing the First Lady. Was this accidental? Or does it suggest the Trump circle operates within networks where such associations are normalized? And when the film fails commercially, does that failure partially reflect public discomfort with these connections? Reports suggest Trump has been desperately trying to avoid any sustained public conversation about Epstein, that whenever the topic threatens to gain traction, he creates distractions or changes subjects. But having Melania's documentary directed by someone allegedly connected to Epstein through photographic evidence keeps that association alive. Every article about the film's failure potentially mentions the Epstein connection. Every review that might eventually emerge could reference it. The film becomes a vehicle for keeping Trump's Epstein problems in public consciousness rather than allowing them to fade. And there's the irony that Melania herself might be attempting to build post-Trump independence through this project. Sources suggest she's transitioning from reluctant First Lady to active brand builder, that she might be planning for life after Donald by establishing herself as someone with commercial value beyond just being his wife. But if that strategy depends on this documentary succeeding, and it's allegedly failing catastrophically, her entire brand-building attempt collapses before it begins. Now let's talk about what sources suggest might be the most telling aspect of this entire disaster. Reports indicate the studio could be considering withholding official box office numbers if the opening weekend performs as weakly as projected. Think about what that means. When a film's performance is so embarrassing that you'd rather not report it publicly, you're admitting complete failure. Studios release box office numbers because that's how the industry tracks performance, and because good numbers create positive publicity that can drive additional ticket sales. The only reason to hide numbers is if they're so bad that publicity would be negative. And if Amazon is actually considering this strategy as reports suggest, they're essentially admitting they've created a disaster so complete that transparency would make it worse. But hiding the numbers might not actually be possible in the modern media environment. Trade publications track box office independently. Theaters report their sales. Industry analysts make estimates based on multiple data sources. Amazon might try not officially confirming numbers, but sources suggest the real performance will leak out anyway through various channels. And then the story becomes not just that the film flopped, but that Amazon tried to hide how badly it flopped, which could make the narrative even more negative. Share this with everyone because there's also what this strategy might reveal about Trump's likely response. If official numbers don't get released, Trump could claim whatever box office performance he wants on social media, could declare the film a tremendous success regardless of reality, could attack anyone reporting actual numbers as fake news. That's his pattern. Deny obvious failures and insist everything he touches is the greatest success ever. But if the failure is visible enough, if empty theaters are obvious to anyone who walks by, if videos of booing audiences keep spreading on social media, Trump's denials might ring even more hollow than usual, and that could damage his credibility on other issues. When people can see with their own eyes that something Trump claims is successful is actually failing spectacularly, they might start questioning his claims about other subjects too. But there's another layer to this disaster that sources suggest could make it even more humiliating for Trump. The premiere is reportedly happening at the venue he renamed the Trump Kennedy Center, so the film's failure becomes permanently associated with Trump's controversial takeover of that cultural institution. Every article about empty theaters mentions they're at the Trump Kennedy Center. Every piece about the flop reinforces the connection between Trump's name and commercial disaster. Think about what Trump was allegedly hoping the Kennedy Center rebrand would accomplish, adding prestige to the Trump name by associating it with high culture and presidential legacy, creating a venue that would host Trump family projects and generate positive coverage, establishing Trump as someone who saves important institutions rather than someone who destroys them. But if the first major event at the Trump Kennedy Center is a commercial catastrophe, if Melania's documentary premiere becomes associated with empty theaters and audience rejection, the entire rebrand backfires. Instead of adding prestige to Trump's name, the Kennedy Center becomes associated with failure. Instead of generating positive coverage, it creates mockery. Instead of proving Trump saves institutions, it demonstrates that his involvement makes things worse. And sources suggest this could have lasting impact on the Kennedy Center itself. Artists might be even less willing to perform there if it's becoming known as the venue where Trump family vanity projects fail spectacularly. Donors might question whether supporting an institution Trump has branded is good for their own reputations. The association with Trump could become toxic for the center's ability to fulfill its actual cultural mission. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show because there's reportedly concern among Kennedy Center staff about what this premier disaster does to their institution's reputation. They might have been forced to host this event due to Trump's control of the board. But when it becomes a national joke, when late-night comedians are mocking empty theaters at the Trump Kennedy Center, when this becomes a symbol of Trump brand failure, the institution suffers regardless of whether staff wanted any part of it. But step back and look at what this documentary disaster might reveal about where Trump's brand actually stands. Because sources suggest this could be one of the clearest demonstrations yet that Trump's name has become so toxic it repels rather than attracts. That even his most loyal supporters aren't willing to spend money on Trump-associated products. And if that's true, the implications for his political future could be devastating. Reports indicate ticket sales are terrible even in Palm Beach, Trump's stronghold. These are supposedly people who love Trump, who voted for him, who defend him against critics. Yet they apparently won't pay to see a documentary about his wife, even when it's showing in their local theaters. What does that tell you about the actual commercial value of the Trump brand? And think about the broader pattern this fits into. Trump merchandise sales that might be declining, Trump properties that allegedly lose value when his name gets attached, the Kennedy Center situation where artists reportedly cancel because of the Trump association. Everything suggests the Trump brand, far from being valuable, has become a liability that makes products and institutions less attractive rather than more. This matters enormously for Trump's post-presidency plans. Sources suggest he's been building toward monetizing his political movement after leaving office. But if nobody will buy tickets to a Melania documentary even when it's marketed to his base, what hope is there for other Trump-branded products? The documentary failure could be preview of what happens when Trump tries commercializing his presidency after it ends. And there's the political dimension. If Trump supporters won't spend money on his family's projects, how enthusiastic will they be about donating to political campaigns or showing up to vote? Consumer behavior might be a leading indicator of political engagement. When people stop buying into the brand commercially, political support could follow. So here's what Melania's documentary disaster reveals. a $40 million deal that sources suggest might have been coerced rather than based on legitimate commercial potential. Another $35 million allegedly spent on marketing for a total $75 million investment. Early projections suggesting the film could make only $5 million opening weekend. Reports of ticket sales so dismal, the studio might be considering hiding official numbers. Social media allegedly flooded with videos of audiences booing the trailer. Amazon executives being dispatched to premieres in desperate attempt to create appearance of support. All of it potentially exposes Trump's brand as worthless. Even his supporters apparently won't pay to see content about his family. The Trump Kennedy Center premiere becomes associated with empty theaters and commercial catastrophe rather than prestige. The entire corrupt arrangement where Bezos might have felt pressured to buy a terrible product gets revealed when that product fails as badly as the numbers suggest it might, and the failure could have ripple effects beyond just this one film. Damage to Trump's ability to monetize his brand post-presidency. Evidence that his name has become toxic rather than valuable. Demonstration that corruption might create short-term deals but can't force actual consumer interest. Symbol of everything Trump touches eventually failing regardless of how much money gets thrown at it. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show because we're covering every aspect of this disaster as it unfolds. Every new report about terrible ticket sales, every video of audiences rejecting the film, every way this becomes a symbol of Trump brand toxicity. This could be the moment when even Trump supporters demonstrate through their wallets that the brand has lost whatever value it once had. Stay tuned.